The Senate Armed Services Committee recently convened to discuss Golden Dome. Space Force General Bradley Saltzman was on hand to testify.
The most recent addition in our mission set is the space-based technology associated with the Golden Dome program, which will depend heavily on Space Force sensors, data fusion, and communication capabilities.
Golden Dome is the new defense shield that will be designed to fend off missiles from adversaries and will be a central focus of the Space Force. The shield is backed by an executive order by President Trump and has the support of Congress. One of Golden Dome's proponents is Republican Senator Kramer. His line of questioning centered around U.S. adversaries and their capabilities.
I was reading about Golden Dome. I do a lot of that these days, and noticed that two of our least favorite dictators in the world, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, had put out a joint statement worrying about the Golden Dome being a, quote, having a destabilizing effect, and suggesting that the United States might be leading toward weaponizing space, which is rich coming from those two guys. Do our enemies have weapons in space that you know of, General?
Yes, Senator, they do. Over the last few years, we've observed, for instance, the Russians have performed some very aggressive on-orbit capabilities in terms of plane matching, getting very close to some of our most sensitive satellites in aggressive ways. They've released what could be presumed to be kinetic kill vehicles that we've watched on orbit. The PRC has demonstrated the ability to use a grappling arm to grab a satellite and pull it out of its operational orbit, return it. All of these are demonstrated capabilities that could be used as anti-satellite technology.
It was then Senator Round's turn. He questioned whether Golden Dome would be feasible if the U.S. vacated certain bands of spectrum.
Is it possible to make it work if the Department of Defense were forced to vacate portions of the 3.1 to 3.45 gigahertz band and other unnamed critical bands of the spectrum that the Space Force currently uses as well?
Senator, as we evaluate the sensors that are going to be necessary to pick up hypersonics, to pick up cruise missiles, to pick up ballistic missiles, the radars are essential in that area, and that 3.1 to 3.45 is, like, as the Secretary mentioned, the physical properties of that spectrum range are ideal for that kind of detection using radar, and so the sensing part of the Golden Dome would suffer if we had to vacate.
As the hearing concluded, senators raised concerns whether or not the Space Force was adequately funded to build Golden Dome.
You've been very diplomatic today, but if we were starting with a blank sheet of paper in terms of the threats that we're facing, particularly the militarization of space by both the Russians and the Chinese, 3% of the defense budget for the Space Force is totally inadequate. And I hope you can comment on that, understanding that you're under the subject of the defense budget and all those kinds of things. But as far as I'm concerned, we need to vastly, significantly increase the availability of funds to the Space Force, given the magnitude of the mission to which you've been assigned.
I agree, Senator. The last 3 years of funding has not allowed me to go as quickly as possible, putting counterspace capabilities together that address the targets that I'm being asked to address by U.S. Space Command, amongst other combatant commanders.
One of the ways I like to think about these things is if you were starting with a blank sheet of paper for allocation of defense funds today, I don't think there's any question that the Space Force would get substantially more resources given the development of the threat, which is the first hours or days of any conflict with a major adversary are going to take place in space.
As is often the case, I find myself following Senator King and agreeing with him with regard to your budget. And maybe this is a redundant question, but are you adequately funded to meet this kind of a threat in space, and as well as obviously the rest of the world that you have to protect?
It's just about scale, sir. I've often used the analogy that it's like transforming the Merchant Marine into the U.S. Navy or United Airlines into the U.S. Air Force. There's a lot of new equipment, there's new training, there's new people. We can't just take what we had and presume that we can gain space superiority with that equipment. That new equipment requires new resources. And so that's where the disconnect comes, I think, in full funding.
To keep up to date on the latest congressional news, stay tuned to Congress Clips. And don't forget to like and subscribe.